Thank you, Dick, for that kind introduction and warm reflection on Ralph's leadership and his personal connection to so many of you here today. And thank you to all of you, to the Mass Bar Foundation Fellows, grantees, donors, friends here this evening, for allowing me to take a few minutes to talk about something that's very dear to my heart. And that is the Ralph D. Gantz Access to Justice Fund. As we all know, and as Dick mentioned, when he died, Ralph's work was not done. So we decided to honor him by honoring his work and by continuing to do the work that he cared about. His work focused on empowering the disempowered, ensuring the rights of marginalized populations, and protecting the vulnerable. But there were three specific areas that were of importance to him. The first area was access to justice. He had spent years trying to address the structural barriers that litigants, especially the pro se litigants, faced every day. He encouraged all of us to sign up for Lawyer for the Day programs so that the 80% of litigants entering family court and entering housing court without lawyers by their sides could have legal assistance. He advocated for a civil Gideon law that would fund lawyers to those facing eviction. And on the day that he died, he was working with a 95-person task force that he had helped to convene to stave off evictions in housing court. He was trying to provide those facing eviction with legal mediators, with lawyers, with housing specialists, and with raft funds that would enable the tenants to negotiate a settlement with their landlords and keep tenants in their homes. The second focus of his work was, of course, racial justice. He knew that Black people in Massachusetts were being imprisoned at a rate 8 times that of their white cohorts, and Latinx people at 5 times the rate of white people. In terms of national disparities, we ranked first in the country in terms of Latinx disparities and 13th in terms of Black disparities. He wanted to learn what are the factors driving these disparities, and he was committed to addressing those factors. To that end, he commissioned the Harvard Law School to do a report on those disparities. And on the day that he died, he sat in this room and worked on the court's response to that study. Finally, his third focus was on criminal justice reform. He had worked with the Mass Bar Association and other groups to get criminal reform legislation passed. He testified before the legislature about the racial disparities being created by mandatory minimum sentences. And he was also very focused on reentry programs. He knew that 2/3 of those entering the criminal justice system returned to it too quickly. So he worked with probation and the legislature to provide reentry services at every local office for community corrections for every person leaving prison or jail. Knowing how passionate he was about these issues, Rachel, Michael, and I thought the best way to honor him would be to continue his legacy. He ran out of time. But we decided to use our time to move forward with his work in these three areas. So, together with some of his treasured colleagues and friends, we created the Chief Justice Ralph D. Gantz Access to Justice Fund, with the goal of raising funds in his memory and stewarding those resources to support the courts and nonprofit organizations that are working to advance the causes he cared so deeply about. The three priority areas of the fund are aligned with his work. The things he focused on tirelessly before he passed: access to justice, racial equity, and criminal justice reform. We realized funds for structural changes in these areas were scarce, and that small amounts of money could be used to help the courts and legal services organizations by creating a cadre of Ralph Gantz Access to Justice and Judicial Intern Fellows. By prioritizing law students of color, first-gen students, and law students with disabilities, we will be trying to create a pipeline of social justice advocates and judicial interns. We hope these fellows and interns will one day aspire to be judges so that our judiciary will begin to reflect the rich diversity of the state. We also hope to provide money to train our judges about restorative justice practices and to provide the Office of Community Corrections with reentry funds that will help those coming out of prison and jail navigate the reentry process. We are so grateful to the Massachusetts Bar Association for giving the fund its virtual home, and to the Mass Bar Foundation for serving as our fiscal agent. We are so honored to have Denise Murphy and Dick Gahn both serving on the fund's advisory committee. We started this effort back in October, and these initial few months have been focused on fundraising from law firms and from individuals. I am thrilled to report that we have raised over $340,000 so far. The committee will be continuing in its fundraising efforts, but we are also now turning our attention to grant making and hope to make our first grants by the end of this year. We are very humbled by the response so far. The legal community has clearly stepped up to honor Ralph, and in this incredibly meaningful way. Our family and the committee is so grateful. I'm sure quite a few of you here this evening have donated to the fund, and I offer my heartfelt thanks to you as well. And thanks to Dick, Susanna, and Allie for their behind-the-scenes support in getting this fund off the ground. I invite everyone here tonight to join our efforts. Working together, we can continue Ralph's legacy and ensure that we create an increasingly fair and accessible legal system for all. I want to leave you with a quote from the Talmud. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the work before us. Do justly now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are any of us free to abandon it. Thank you. And with that, I will turn the program over to Dick and offer all of you my heartfelt wishes for a successful year ahead for the Mass Bar Foundation.